So what HTML attributes are, they provide additional information about the element and the user at the same time, or sometimes just the document structure. Now, the thing you have to know about HTML is that it is a very inconsistent language, all right? So whoever created it very inconsistently, meaning that some elements are great without attributes, and some elements require attributes in order to work correctly. Now, let me show you a quick example. So, how attributes are usually added is you have name value pairs, and the name denotes the function that you're expected the attribute to do, and the value is basically the action you're instructing it to perform. All right, so let me give you a quick example. Let's embed an image into our file. Let's start with opening the img element and going with source. Now, source is an attribute, an HTML attribute, and this is the name of the attribute, which is src, and by itself it won't do anything, so we needed to have a value. And let's do an equal sign, and you add the value in between those quotation marks, okay? You can use double quotation marks, or you can use single quotation marks. Now, I'd prefer to use double quotation marks. It's not technically a standard, like there's no W3C standard about whether you should use single or double quotation marks, but I like to use double quotation marks unless the text inside my attribute has single quotation marks, all right? And vice versa, if the value of the attribute has double quotation marks, then use single quotation marks. Okay, so let's add my logo here. Now let's close the element and see we have it appeared on the screen. My logo is appeared on the screen after we added it as a value to the source or src attribute. And by the way, this is an old naming convention at the beginning of programming and HTML, whatever you want to call it. So developers were using shorthands for everything until they realized that actually this impedes readability and it's bad. So instead of image, they have img, and instead of source, they have src. Also, another reason they use the shorthands for everything is computers in the past, they had very little memory, right? They had like 500 megabytes of RAM. That was considered a kick-ass computer that you'll be able to play Doom at. So, but anyways, so to repeat, this is the name of the attribute, followed by quotation marks, and then all the information in between those quotation marks is the attribute value. And if you make a mistake, some values can easily ignore a mistake and continue working, but some are very strict, all right? So if I make a mistake to my file, for example, I add s at the end, my logo will disappear or my image will disappear, okay? And let me show you about the quotation mark thing. So as you know, every image needs to have an out attribute, and the out attribute will help with screen readers, and will also help display text if the image can be accessed, which happens more often than we can admit. So if I do, for example, if I want to add Stephanie web design logo, but if I want to add quotation marks, for example, design, I'm going to add them single quotation marks, since my quotation marks on the outside are double, all right? And that's pretty much it for the basic structure. Now, let me show you what I mean by inconsistencies in HTML. So the img element cannot work without the attributes, okay? If you just have an empty img element, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to be pretty much void. But let's try another element, for example, the h1 element, and let's do heading of the site, all right? Now, the h1 element works great without any attributes. And this is the thing with HTML, it's very inconsistent. That's why I have been a developer for 8 years and I still go regularly to W3 schools. And if a developer says they don't do it, they're lying to you, all right? That's because it is so difficult to remember which type of element needed to have attributes, what kind of attributes. There are also empty attributes. Like, for example, if you have an input if you have an input element and you want it to be required, you can either write it like that or like this, required. All right. So yeah, there are two ways to write it, and both of those ways are valid HTML markup. So that's pretty much it. Now, not all elements support all attributes. For example, if I put required in the H1, it's not going to do anything, and I think it's going to be a validation error as well, but I'm not sure. Now, when it comes to AMP, there are attributes that AMP has that you can only use on an AMP element, or you can use it in a normal HTML element as long as that normal HTML element is a child of a parent AMP element, okay? And some of these attributes are fallback, on, placeholder, media, and there are a couple more. So this is what we're going to be looking at in this section. We're going to be looking at those attributes that only appear in AMP, and we're going to be looking at what they do and how we can benefit from them.